the rasp of rotting lungs, the scrape of bone on concrete, the silence before the scream. Welcome to the zombie story zone, where the dead don't stay buried and every shadow hides a hunger you can't outrun. If your pulse isn't racing yet, hit subscribe and brace yourself. We deliver bone-chilling tales of the undead, where survival is a whisper, hope dies screaming, and trust is a luxury no one can afford. Ever wondered what it's like to hear nails clawing at your door at 3 a.m.? To see the face of someone you loved twisted by infection? Then press that bell icon, because you won't want to miss what's lurking next. But this isn't just our story, it's yours too. Share this video with anyone bold enough to watch alone in the dark. Let them feel the dread crawl up their spine. And when the credits roll, drop a comment. Tell us, did you lock your windows? Check your closet? Or are you already designing your apocalypse bunker? We want it all. The screams, the theories, the regrets, and your survival strategies. Your feedback fuels this channel. Crave more gut-wrenching twists? Deeper dives into the infected's origins? Say the word. The horde is growing, and we've only just begun. Like, subscribe, run. The clock's ticking, and they're always listening.
Never grows old. Grades and laughter, it's a crazy mix. With every twist and turn, we'll learn some new tricks. So grab your friends, let's dive right in the zombie story zone, let the fun begin. Welcome to the zombie story.
Echoes of Tomorrow. The time machine didn't just scream, it wept. Its bronze gears, polished to a mirror shined by Lila's meticulous hands, now ground against one another like broken bones. Dr. Eli Carter stumbled out of the portal, his lab coat singed and reeking of ozone. The vial in his grip felt heavier than the future he carried. Her future. He could still smell her perfume, jasmine, and burnt coffee as the memory clawed at him. Lila had laughed, her voice bright as sunlight on steel, just moments before the virus took her. You worry too much, Eli. It's just a test jump. But it wasn't. The future they'd glimpsed was a graveyard. Skyscrapers choked by vines, streets littered with gnawed bones, and the infected, those things with milky eyes and teeth like shattered glass, hunting in packs. He'd promised her he'd fix it. Instead, he'd run. The warehouse was a cathedral of shadows, moonlight slicing through cracked windows. Dust motes swirled in the air, glowing like ash from a funeral pyre. Eli collapsed against a rusted oil drum, his lungs burning. The vial trembled in his hand. Lila's last words, destroy it. Don't let it touch the past. But he'd been too slow. A hairline fracture split the glass, black liquid oozing like ink from a poisoned well. No, 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 he choked, fumbling for a sealant patch. His gloves were slick with sweat, his vision blurring. A single drop escaped, hitting the concrete with a hiss. The floor sizzled, tendrils of smoke curling upward. Eli gagged. The stench was sweet, cloying, like rotting fruit. He didn't notice the rat. It scuttled from the shadows, nose twitching, drawn to the droplet. Eli lunged, but his boot caught on a cable. The rat laughed at the liquid, its fur bristling. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then it screamed, a human sound trapped in a tiny body, before its eyes clouded over, veins bulging black beneath its skin. It lunged at Eli, teeth bared, but he crushed it under his heel, his breath coming in ragged sobs. Too late. By dawn, Cedar Brook stirred like a drowsy beast. At the Sunrise Diner, old Mrs. Henderson sipped her chamomile tea, her knuckles white around the mug. Saw a comet last night, she muttered to the waitress, Jenny. Big as a dinner plate. Bad omen, that. Jenny rolled her eyes, refilling coffee cups. You watch too much Ancient Aliens, Mrs. H. But her hand shook as she poured. She'd seen it too, a streak of green light slicing the sky, followed by a tremor that rattled the syrup bottles. At table 6, Deputy Collins scraped eggs across his plate, his radio crackling. All units, code 10 to 78 at the truck stop. Possible OD. He sighed. Tourist season always brought the worst. Outside, the wind carried whispers. A stray dog growled at nothing, foam dripping from its jaws. A toddler pointed at crows circling the water tower, their cries sharp as knives. By noon, Jenny collapsed behind the counter, her apron stained with vomit. Just need a minute, she slurred, her veins darkening like cracks in ice. Deputy Collins found her an hour later, crouched in the freezer, gnawing on a rack of ribs. Her eyes reflected nothing. Eli woke to the sound of sirens. He'd passed out in the warehouse, his cheek pressed to cold concrete. The vial lay beside him, still leaking. His glove was stained black. Lila's voice echoed, "You idiot. You reckless, beautiful idiot." He staggered to his feet, the world tilting. The bite on his arm, Lila's parting gift, throbbed. Why wasn't he turning? The time jump? The machine's radiation? Or maybe the virus needed time to adapt. A news alert blared from his cracked phone. Mysterious outbreak in Cedar Brook. Stay indoors. Footage showed a mob outside the hospital, their movements jerky, unnatural. Eli's stomach lurched. He'd seen this before, in the future he'd doomed. He smashed the vial against the wall, glass shattering. The liquid writhed, alive, before evaporating into the air. "I'm sorry," he whispered, to Lila, to the town, to the ghost of the man he'd once been. But the wind carried his apology away, already thick with screams. The hospital's fluorescent lights hummed like a dirge. Dr. Mara Reyes stood in the ER, her stethoscope cold against her chest, staring at the boy in bed for. Kyle Thompson, 16, honor student, bitten at football practice. His mother's screams ricocheted down the hallway. "That's not my son. That's not my son." But Mara didn't flinch. She'd heard those screams before. 2 years ago, in this same hospital, she'd held David's hand as leukemia devoured him. He joked through the pain, his voice raspy but warm. "Promise me you'll bake that lemon cake again, March. The one with the burnt edges." She'd promised, but the oven in their apartment had stayed cold ever since. Now, Kyle's body arched off the gurney, restraints biting into his wrists. His jaw unhinged with a wet pop, tendons snapping like rubber bands. Mara's breath hitched. For a heartbeat, she saw David's face superimposed over Kyle's, sunken cheeks, waxy skin, eyes pleading for mercy. "Don't let me go," David had whispered. She hadn't. "Increase the sedation." Mara barked, but the nurse, a rookie named Jess, froze, her clipboard clattering to the floor. Kyle's milky eyes locked onto Mara, his growl guttural, primal. It wasn't human. It wasn't alive. "Dr. Reyes." Jess stumbled back as Kyle's spine twisted, vertebrae cracking like firewood. His arm snapped free, fingers clawing the air. Mara lunged, jamming a syringe of midazolam into his neck. The needle bent. "Get out," Mara ordered, her voice steady. Jess fled. Alone, Mara gripped Kyle's thrashing head, her palms slick with sweat. David's voice echoed, "You can't save everyone, March." "Watch me," she muttered. The heart monitor flatlined. Kyle went still. For a breath, Mara thought she'd won. Then his hand shot up, cold fingers closing around her throat. Outside, the storm raged. Rain lashed the hospital windows, blurring the parking lot into a watercolor of panic. Cars revved engines, ramming the iron gates. A man in a bloodied football jersey staggered past the ambulance bay, his neck torn open. Mara pressed her forehead to the glass, the chaos refracted into fractured glimpses of her own reflection, dark circles under her eyes, hair escaping its bun, the scar on her neck, a childhood fall, she'd always said, throbbing faintly. The mayor arrived in a tailored suit, untouched by rain. His smile was a politician's weapon. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the cameras, "this is a temporary flu variant. Stay calm. Avoid crowds." Mara's fist clenched. Temporary. Flu. She'd heard that before too. When David's coughs were dismissed as seasonal allergies. When his bruises were just clumsiness. She stormed into the supply closet, her sanctuary since David's death. Shelves of gauze and saline bottles watched silently as she stuffed a duffel bag, scalpels, vials of morphine, blood sample kits. Her hands trembled. "What are you doing?" But she knew. She'd done this before. The night David died, she'd stolen his EKG printout, the erratic peaks and valleys of his dying heart, and tucked it into her copy of Gray's Anatomy. A morbid keepsake. Now, she stole again. The parking lot was a war zone. Rain soaked through Mara's scrubs as she sprinted toward her Jeep. A minivan screeched past, its side dented, children wailing inside. A woman in pajamas clawed at the ER doors, her face streaked with mascara and blood. "My baby. They took my baby." Mara froze. The woman's eyes were pitch black. Then she saw him. A man in a singed lab coat barreled through the crowd, his hair wild, eyes darting like a hunted animal. He carried a leather satchel, its strap frayed, and something about him, the way he moved, desperate yet precise, made her think of David in his final days, refusing to surrender to the pain. "Stop!" Mara yelled, but the man shoved past her, knocking the duffel bag from her grip. Vials shattered. Morphine pooled at her feet. Security tackled him in the lobby. His face smeared against the linoleum, his glasses skittering across the floor. "It's airborne now," he screamed, spit and blood flecking his lips. "Burn this place down. Burn it." Mara crouched, retrieving his glasses. The lenses were cracked, the frames bent. When she handed them back, their fingers brushed. His skin was furnace hot. Their eyes met. His were bloodshot, pupils dilated, not with fear, but guilt. A guilt she recognized. The guilt of a survivor. "Who are you?" she whispered. He opened his mouth, then convulsed, black vomit spraying her shoes. The library attic smelled of decay, not the rot of the infected, but the slow, sweet decline of paper and glue. Sunlight filtered through grime-caked windows, painting dust motes gold as they drifted over towers of moldering books. Eli sat cross-legged on the floor, a human island in a sea of equations. Maps of Cedar Brook were pinned to the walls, marked with red circles and frantic arrows. Here, the football field where Kyle was bitten. There, the diner where the waitress had coughed her last human breath. Mara hovered in the doorway, her duffel bag heavy with stolen supplies. She'd followed him here on instinct, driven by the same stubborn curiosity that had made her pore over David's medical charts long after the doctors had given up. The man hunched over those papers didn't look like a savior. He looked like a ghost, pale, unshaven, his lab coat streaked with ash and something darker. "You're either a genius," she said, tossing a wrapped sandwich from the hospital cafeteria onto his pile of notes, "or the most dangerous lunatic I've ever met." Eli didn't flinch. His hands trembled as he unwrapped the sandwich, the crinkle of plastic loud in the silence. "Geniuses are lunatics," he said, voice raw. "They just get better PR." He rolled up his sleeve. The bite glared up at them, a jagged halo of blackened flesh, veins spidering outward like cracks in ice. Mara's breath caught. She'd seen infections, but this was alive. The edges pulsed faintly, as if breathing. "Does it hurt?" she asked, reaching out but not touching. Eli laughed, a hollow sound. "Only when I breathe. Or blink. Or exist." Rain drummed against the roof, the storm muting the world outside. Mara sat beside him, her shoulder inches from his. The attic felt like a confessional. "I lost someone too," she said, picking at the edge of her scrubs. 2 years ago. Leukemia. Eli's pen stilled. Was he a architect? Terrible at cooking. Loved lemon cake. She swallowed. He joked about haunting me if I didn't move on. Sometimes I still set a place for him at breakfast. Eli's gaze flicked to her, sharp yet tender. Lila hated chocolate. Called it roach food. I'd hide truffles in her desk drawers just to hear her yell. His smile was fleeting. She was brilliant. The kind of person who'd rewrite Einstein's equations on napkins. And I got her killed. Mara's chest tightened. She recognized that guilt, the kind that gnawed bone deep. "You didn't." "I did." He slammed his fist into the floor, papers rustling. "I chose to jump. To play God. And now," he gestured to the bite, the maps, the storm. Silence settled, thick and suffocating. Mara reached for his hand. His skin was fever hot, but she didn't let go. The crash came without warning. Glass shattered downstairs, followed by a wet, guttural snarl. Eli lurched to his feet, knocking over a tower of books. "They're here." Mara's pulse roared in her ears. "How?" The hospital was miles. "The virus is airborne now." He grabbed her wrist, yanking her toward a rusted service hatch in the ceiling. "It's in the rain." They scrambled onto the roof, rain soaking them instantly. Below, the streets seethed. A dozen infected lurched through the downpour, their movements jerky yet relentless. A woman in a nurse's uniform dragged a mangled leg behind her, her jaw hanging by sinew. A child, God, a child, crawled on all fours, his spine bent at a sickening angle. "Don't look," Eli muttered, but Mara couldn't turn away. The child's head snapped up. Milky eyes locked onto hers. "Run." They leaped across rooftops, tiles slick underfoot. Mara's sneakers skidded, and for one heart-stopping second, she dangled over the edge, Eli's grip the only thing anchoring her. The infected howled beneath them, skeletal hands clawing at the air. "I've got you," Eli growled, hauling her up. His arms shook, but he didn't let go. They collapsed behind a chimney, breathless. Mara's hand still clutched his, their fingers intertwined. She hadn't held someone's hand since David's funeral. "Why did you come back for me?" she asked. "At the hospital." Eli stared at the storm-dark horizon. Because you looked at me like I wasn't a monster. The warehouse loomed like a skeletal giant, its corrugated metal walls groaning under the weight of the storm. Eli shouldered the door open, his breath ragged, and Mara followed, her boots crunching over shattered glass and discarded machinery parts. The air inside was thick with the tang of rust and ozone, a metallic whisper of decay. In the center of the cavernous space, the time machine hummed faintly, its brass gears tarnished and streaked with dried blood. To Mara, it looked less like a marvel of science and more like a tomb. Eli collapsed against a stack of crates labeled Fragile, 1987, hissing as he clutched his infected arm. The bite had worsened, black veins now clawed toward his collarbone, pulsing as if feeding on him. Mara knelt beside him, her medical kit spilling open. As she cleaned the wound, her fingers brushed his feverish skin, and he flinched. "Does it always feel like this?" she asked, dabbing antiseptic on the necrotic flesh. "Like burning?" "Only when I'm awake," Eli muttered, his laugh more of a cough. His eyes drifted to a faded Polaroid pinned to the wall, a woman with wild curls and a smirk, standing beside the time machine. Layla. Mara recognized her from Eli's stories, but here, she was frozen in time, forever triumphant. Mara's gaze lingered on a dusty architect's blueprint nearby, its edges curled. David's handwriting, loopy and impatient, flashed in her mind. "Why do you always steal my pens?" he'd teased, drafting plans at their kitchen table. She blinked, the memory dissolving like smoke. Night draped the warehouse in shadows. Eli thrashed in fitful sleep, murmuring Lila's name. Mara paced, her flashlight beam slicing through darkness. The time machine's core flickered, casting jagged blue light on walls plastered with equations and newspaper clippings. Local woman vanishes in experimental lab fire, 2003. Unexplained riot at Cedar Brook Hospital, 2023. A low moan seeped through the walls. Mara froze. Outside, silhouettes shuffled, a horde drawn by the machine's hum, their guttural cries harmonizing with the storm. She pressed her ear to the cold metal door. Scratch, scratch, scratch. "They're getting louder," Eli rasped, suddenly awake. He sat up, sweat gluing his shirt to his chest. "Why here?" Mara asked, nodding to the machine. "Why not destroy it?" "Because it's her," he said bitterly. "Destroying it would be like killing her again." Mara's chest tightened. She thought of David's ashes, the urn still on her mantle. Letting go is a myth. They sat shoulder to shoulder on a moth-eaten couch, a single candle between them. Eli's hands trembled as he sketched equations in the air. Time isn't linear. It's a web. Pluck one thread, and the whole thing vibrates. Poetic, Mara said, though she understood. Grief was a web too. He turned to her, his eyes glassy with fever, or tears. "I tried to undo it. Jumped back 6 times. But the virus, it's smarter. It finds a way." Mara's fingers grazed the scar on her neck, a habit she'd never broken. "What if you're not supposed to undo it? What if this is the thread?" The candle guttered. Shadows swallowed Lila's photo, the blueprint, the clippings. Eli's hand found hers, calloused and warm. "Then I'd choose this thread," he said quietly. Their kiss was slow, desperate, a collision of loneliness and need. Mara's mind flashed to David's last kiss, dry and medicinal, and for a heartbeat, she pulled back. But Eli's breath hitched, raw and alive, and she leaned in again, anchoring herself to now. A deafening bang rattled the door. The horde screeched, fists pounding. The candle died. "They're in," Eli whispered. Eli's nightmares were no longer his own. They began with Lila's laughter, bright, unburdened, as she adjusted the time machine's dials. "One more test jump," she'd said, her curls escaping her ponytail. But the vision always twisted, her eyes bleeding black, her hands clawing at him as the virus seized her mind. "You did this," she'd rasp, her breath reeking of copper and decay. "You chose this." He woke screaming, his throat raw, the warehouse's cold air sharp in his lungs. Mara stirred beside him, her warmth a fleeting comfort. Moonlight sliced through the cracks in the walls, illuminating the time machine's jagged silhouette. It seemed to pulse, taunting him. "Fix me. Use me." Mara's hand found his, her fingers steady. "Another nightmare?" He nodded, unable to speak. The bite on his arm throbbed, veins now creeping past his collarbone, branching like dark lightning across his chest. He'd stopped checking the mirror. By dawn, Eli was hunched over the machine's control panel, blood dripping from his nose onto the keys. His notes sprawled around him, equations crossed out, timelines scribbled into oblivion. 1999, 2010. 2023. Each jump had worsened the outbreak. In one timeline, Layla survived, but the virus consumed Europe. In another, Cedar Brook burned before Mara was even born. Failure. 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 What are you doing? Mara's voice cut through the haze. He didn't look up. Calculating the jump radius. If I go back farther, before the virus evolved. She grabbed his wrist, her grip bruising. You're burning up. Your pupils, they're black. He yanked free, his vision swimming. I'm out of time, Mara. Don't you get it? The virus isn't just in me. It's rewriting me. He tore open his shirt. The veins reached his sternum now, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Mara recoiled, then forced herself closer, her medic's instincts overriding horror. Her fingers traced the corrupted tissue, cold against his fevered skin. It's fractal, she whispered. Like it's building something inside you. Eli laughed, a wet, broken sound. A bridge. Between timelines. I'm becoming a conduit. Mara waited until he passed out. His satchel lay crumpled in the corner, the vial of black liquid peeking out. She'd studied his blood samples for hours, the microscope revealing cells that split and fused impossibly, part past, part future. A hybrid. A key. Her hands shook as she filled a syringe. David's voice, you're always trying to fix the unfixable, March. This time I can, she muttered. The needle hovered over her arm. What if it works? What if it doesn't? A shadow fell over her. Eli swayed in the doorway, his eyes fully black now, blood trickling from his nostrils. Don't, he rasped. You don't know what it'll do to you. And you do? She backed away, the vial clutched to her chest. Yes, his voice cracked. I've seen it. In every timeline, you. The horde outside roared, drowning him out. The infected had multiplied, their stench seeping through the walls. Mara's heel hit the machine, its metal biting into her spine. You brought this here, she screamed, tears blurring her vision. Now let me fix it. Eli lunged. They crashed into the machine, its gears shrieking. A spark ignited a stack of papers, flames racing up the walls. Smoke clawed at Mara's throat as Eli pinned her, his strength inhuman. You think I didn't try, he snarled, black tears cutting through the grime on his face. I've watched you die 100 times. This is the only thread where you live. Mara froze. Live? The firelight flickered in his eyes, and for a heartbeat, she saw it, a future where she stood alone in a graveyard of ash, his name etched on a headstone. The roof groaned. Embers rained down as the horde's pounding crescendoed. Then we burn it together, she whispered. The cure failed. Mara slumped over her makeshift lab, breath shallow. Eli crawled to her, vision blurring. Mara? She turned. A black tear streaked her cheek. It's in me. It's always been in me. She unbuttoned her collar. A scar snaked up her neck. 3 years ago, a patient bit me. The tests were clean. Eli's stomach dropped. He'd seen that scar in Lila's files. You went back to save me, Mara whispered, but I'm patient zero. The virus evolved inside me. The truth detonated. His time jumps hadn't caused the outbreak, they'd accelerated it. The horde broke through the door. Eli's arms trembled as he carried Mara into the machine, her body lighter now, her breath shallow and tinged with decay. The horde surged behind them, their gnarled fingers snagging at his ankles, their moans a cacophony of hunger and despair. Mara's head lolled against his shoulder, her scar, that damned scar, pulsing faintly under her jawline, a roadmap to the beginning of the end. Stay with me, he begged, his voice cracking. The machine's controls glowed cold under his fingertips, the symbols Lila had etched years ago now blurred by his tears. Mara's hand rose weakly, her fingers brushing his cheek. Her skin was paper-thin, her smile a ghost of the woman who'd kissed him in the dark. Always, she whispered, the word wet and fraying. He activated the machine. The world unraveled. Time wasn't a line, it was a scream. Eli's bones vibrated, his cells splitting and fusing as eras collided. Flashes burned behind his eyelids, Lila laughing in a sunlit lab, her goggles slipping down her nose. Mara, years younger, pressing a stethoscope to a homeless man's chest, unaware of the vile Echo 7 hidden in her coat. David's funeral, rain soaking into fresh soil. And the virus, always the virus, a shadow curling through history, patient and perpetual. Mara's body flickered in his arms, her form dissolving and reforming. For a heartbeat, she was whole again, scrubs clean, eyes bright, her scar a pale thread. End it, she mouthed, her voice lost to the void. The machine screamed. They materialized in 2023, the warehouse pristine, sunlight pooling on untouched concrete. Mara gasped, her fingers clutching at Eli's coat. "It's gone," she breathed, her voice clear, her skin warm. Eli stared at her, memorizing the flecks of gold in her eyes, the way her hair caught the light. Alive. She was alive. But the vial in his pocket hummed, heavy with the truth. "I'm sorry," he said, smashing it against the machine. The black liquid evaporated, the paradox snapping like a wire. Mara's scream tore through him as the portal swallowed him whole, Eli. Her voice echoing across timelines, a sound he'd hear forever. Dr. Mara Reyes scrubbed her hands raw. A homeless man's bite gnawed at her thoughts. His blood work was strange, metallic, almost alive. In her lab, a vial glowed, Echo 7, smuggled from a military site. She pocketed it. For research, she told herself. That night, she dreamed of a man with sad eyes and a broken machine. He whispered, "Layla." She woke scratching her neck. Blood smeared her collar. Somewhere, a time machine screamed. Somewhere, the loop began.
In the shadows of the night, where the